This is episode 37 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Welcome to episode 37 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today I have Shawn Rea on the show for the second time. He was so inspiring the first time I had to have him on a second time here in person right in the studio. Shawn came on and he talked about his current strategy. He talked about what he's been doing over the summer and how now he's starting to move from focusing on multifamilies that are just for families to also having some multifamilies with Airbnb components as well. It's a creative strategy. Shawn's always finding new ways to cash flow, and I mean cash flow big. He's a smart renovator when he needs to be, but the thing I took away from Shawn is that he knows his market better than his competition. If there's one takeaway from this episode, it's to know your market better. And when you listen to this episode and watch this episode, you're really going to see why it's so important. Shawn's an incredibly inspiring guy. You're really going to love this episode. Without further ado, here is Shawn Rea. Hello and welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I have Shawn Rea on for the second time to give us an update. Shawn, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. Appreciate it. And I'm glad to be back on.
Yeah, well, I've started to have a couple of people who are in the high performer category come back on and give an update, which I know you were crushing it. You started off with a full head of steam. So for those people who didn't catch the last episode, can you give your little elevator pitch as to how you got started and where you're at right now as an investor?
Yeah, so I got started investing in real estate a couple years back in the Niagara Region. I started with duplexes, and my strategy essentially was to start off house hacking, where I would live in one unit, rent out the other unit, try to build up some equity, save some money, use any cash flow that I was getting to reinvest into another property. Over the last 2 years, the last time when I was on here back in May, I had been able to acquire, I think I was at 13 units when we did the last episode. Okay. And that was about 5 months ago. Since then, I've been able to acquire a couple more properties and also kind of change my strategies. I was really focused just on duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, so the smaller multifamilies, and anything that would cash flow long-term buy and hold. And now I've kind of switched over and I'm starting to get into Airbnb.
Okay, yeah, that is new. That's the first time hearing of Airbnb from you. So that's we'll definitely dive into that and get some numbers going. You started what? You said 4 years ago?
Well, when I really started investing, it was about 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying you had been working a job closer to Toronto at the time, was it? Or you're still in the same one?
No, I'm working in Fort Erie. I also live in Fort Erie now. Yeah. But back before I started, if we rewind a little bit, I was working in Mississauga. I'm originally from Hamilton, so I'm a Steel City boy, I guess. And I had been commuting back and forth from Hamilton to Mississauga. Then I moved to Stoney Creek, and I was commuting from Stoney Creek to Mississauga. Then Welland, and I was commuting from Welland to Mississauga. Oh, wow. And then eventually I made the switch, and I left that job in Mississauga, and now I'm living and working and investing in the Niagara region.
Okay. And I think you were at one point, you said you weren't saving up fast enough. And this, I remember this story. I do tend to remember stories better than anything. You took on 3 jobs at one point.
That was a crazy year. That was really like just hustle.
Yeah. And I think that's a good word to define what you've done. You hustled because I think your family didn't come from a background in real estate investing. No. You didn't have a head start with any money given to you. None at all. So that first property, was that just savings?
That was buying and selling sneakers, basically.
Buying and selling sneakers, saved a down payment, got the first property. And then from there, what's your primary strategy been to get where you are right now?
I would say the best strategy that I have used and successfully executed would be the BRRRR strategy. I've done it a couple times, and man, is it sweet, because you can get all your money back, pretty quickly and have no money in the deal and still be cash flowing.
It's been a while since I listened to our last episode. I don't remember which example you had given. I think you did give an example of a BRRRR that you had done.
Yeah, the last one that we talked about was one where I negotiated.
Yeah, like, you negotiated the deal way down. You kept giving the low offer.
I kept going like the low offer. And when they were finally ready to negotiate with me, I ended up giving them an even lower offer than I had originally been offering them for the past several months. And I was able to get my money back. That includes the rental costs and the down payment in 45 days after I purchased it. And that one cash flows about $1,400 or $1,500 a month.
Wow. $1,500 on one property.
Yes. Yeah.
That's enough to make a lot of investors drool. And do you mind if I ask where you're at roughly as a portfolio now? Now that you're doing Airbnb, it's probably changed quite a bit, but where do you estimate you're at now on a monthly cash flow?
Oh, on a monthly cash flow. I don't really know because I don't know what the numbers from Airbnb are going to look like just yet.
Okay.
We've done a little bit of an analysis, and because the properties that I'm buying are in more of a touristy area, so they're like beachy properties, cottages, stuff like that.
Was that like Crystal Beach area?
Yeah. So I have one in Crystal Beach and then another one in Crescent Beach. Very close to each other, and they're probably going to be mostly rented during the busy summer months. During the off season, I don't know what the numbers are going to look like, but we have seen about $4,000 to $6,000 a month during those 4 primary months. And then on the other months, could be a $500, it could be $1,000, it could be nothing.
Yeah, you might have some months of vacancy there.
Yeah, so we can talk a little bit about the strategy of why I purchased these ones and why I think it's a good idea and it's less risk, because I do have a strategy going into these ones too. It's not strictly Airbnb on these properties.
I would like to know what your angle is here. So why don't you summarize the new strategy that you're working on right now?
Yeah,
and,
so
we'll go on from there.
These Airbnbs that I've picked up are all duplexes, which I don't know how many people are doing that, but the upper units on all the Airbnbs that I've gotten are upper unit that are going to be long-term. So the rents that we're going to get from the upper units on these properties will cover the cost of the mortgage and the taxes.
Really?
You
can make that happen? You're getting these properties cheap enough that
we're
you can
getting
get
them
it?
low enough, that the one unit upstairs, which is usually a 1-bedroom, will cover the entire mortgage and the taxes. And then the lower unit, which is going to be probably, they're all 2 bedrooms, will be utilities, insurance, internet, maybe a Netflix account. And then once that's paid off from the monthly income, the rest is cash flow.
This seems to be a theme, and I wanted to ask you about this, so I'm just going to ask you about it. One of the things that strikes me from the story you had last time was you're one heck of a negotiator. Where'd you get that? And maybe I was wondering if you could kind of walk me through your approach with private sellers, because I know you've bought quite a few off market.
I've bought 2 off market.
Okay.
But a lot of them,
even on market though, you're negotiating.
Even on market, I would say that's where I'm actually finding that I'm getting deals that I don't think are normal are on the on market ones where I'm doing really tough negotiations and where I'm willing to walk away when they don't agree.
So what's your approach? Are you getting in person with people, or are you doing it through your realtor? What do you find most effective?
It's a mixture of both. So the real estate agent that I've been using, we've actually developed quite a good relationship. I've been using her for several years now. And with that relationship comes, I guess, a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more trust. So I'm able to ask her to probably put in offers that other real estate agents won't do. Mm-hmm. And that's just because I think she understands my vision. So she understands that I need to make these numbers work, and she knows the numbers that I'm going after on these properties. So when I put in an offer that might be 10 or 20% less than what the ask price is, we've been able to do certain strategies where, like one of the ones that I picked up 2 months ago, we were able to get it under contract for $45,000 less than the ask price. So the ask price was $315,000. Mm-hmm. We got it at $270,000, and then we were able to negotiate another $10,000 off during the due diligence because of inspection. Okay. And they sold the washer and dryer on us. So there really wasn't that big of a deal. It was more like, okay, you guys sold a washer and dryer that was supposed to be included, and there was some minor plumbing that had to be done, which would have cost less than $500. And we were able to negotiate another $10,000 off the price. So when I look at the numbers, that $10,000 is $10,000 in my pocket. That's now equity. So that's why I'm really, really tough on the negotiation, because I know that money is coming back to me.
Yes, absolutely. Now, do you find the market has to be a certain way for you to be able to do that? So, I mean, first off, getting $45,000 off of ask price in most markets, even in the higher end markets, when you're talking $1 million, they don't want to come down 45 grand. You're on 300,000 getting 45 grand down. How are you able to do that?
I don't know why nobody bought this property, the specific one that we're talking about, because it makes $1,000 cash flow day one, and I haven't had to do any repairs except the $500 worth of plumbing.
What kind of property was it?
It was a legal duplex. The front unit, so the back unit was the owner's kids were living in the back unit. They were also on title. So the owner's kids had said that they're going to vacate the property. The people in the front were paying $1,200 a month. During the due diligence, when we met the tenants in the front, they had kids and they didn't have access to the backyard. So the back unit is a little bit smaller, but it has a backyard. I asked the tenants simply if they would be willing to move to the backyard and pay the same amount, to the back unit with the backyard and pay the same amount. And they were willing to do that. And then we were able to rent the front for $1,450. So we got a purchase price of $260, and we're getting $2,650 a month in rent, and they pay their own hydro and gas.
We might as well just do this now, because this sounds like it's a good one.
Yeah.
So $260,000 purchase price.
Yep.
And any renos?
About $500 worth of renos.
Reno, $500. You probably, you had closing, probably a little interest and carrying costs. So maybe we call it all in like $2,000 or $3,000, something like that.
Sure. Yeah.
We'll call it $2,500. Okay. So you're pretty much all in for $262,500. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds right.
Did you do a refinance on this one or no?
No, this one, the capital it's still in there. I've only owned it for 3 months.
So your down payment on that one is
$53,000.
$52,000 plus a little bit of change. So if we stay consistent with that $2,500, then it'll be about say $54,500 all in, including some of your minor carrying costs, getting the renovations all done. Okay, so let's look at your return. So you've got the cash flow. It's been a while since I've done this, but this seems like a good one. So the cash flow, you're getting $1,000 a month.
I believe so. I believe that's what
about $1,000. So $12,000 a year on the cash flow.
Yeah.
You've got principal pay down of, we're going to say 3% of your mortgage value. $208,000 would be your mortgage. Sounds familiar, right? And we're going to just say 3% a year for a rough number. So that's about $62.40 a year. And then appreciation, do you use 2 or 3? 3. You use 3%. I'm good with that. I mean, we all know we've been getting way better than that, but you never know what will happen going forward. So $260 purchase price times 3%, $7,800 a year. So Shawn, you are getting a return of $26,000 on your $54,500 investment. Do you know what your ROI is?
I guess that's like 52% off the top of my head, around there.
Yeah, you're right around 50, I think. Yeah,
okay.
Just a hair under. Yeah, 47.
47, okay.
So you're getting 47% return on investment for something you barely had to renovate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how secure would you say you are? Because, and let me preface that by saying, like, I feel like an investment in, say, Burlington is super secure because we're really close to Toronto. It'll always rent, but it won't cash flow, right? So you're in an area where your cash flow is more. Do you feel like you sacrificed security for that?
No, not at all, because I've been investing there for the past few years or couple years, like pretty aggressively, right? So I'm going through a lot of tenant profiles. Lots of people are applying. I'm meeting lots of the tenants, seeing what kind of jobs they're working, and these are just like, regular families working hard, two people working hard, and there's lots of people that need housing and that are looking for apartments or to live in a duplex or a triplex, and it's so competitive. The market is so competitive right now that there's no housing. There's literally a crisis, So when you put any apartment up for rent, you have your pick of, 10, 20, 50 applicants.
And that's pushing the numbers up too in the rents, right?
It is. It absolutely is. There's people that are saying that they think it's crazy how much it is, but in reality, like if you look at the different markets, Niagara Region is still cheaper than St. Catharines, Hamilton, and the GTA.
Yeah. Well, St. Catharines is like, they kind of already the bubble caught St. Catharines, but it's still spreading.
Yeah. It's getting pretty relatively close to St. Catharines.
Where is this one? This one's in Welland?
This one is in Fort Erie.
Fort Erie. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're in Fort Erie. Are you done with Welland for now, or are you still looking there too?
No.
Yeah.
I'm still looking there. I put a private offer on one, but it's not in Welland. I thought it was. So
Yeah.
I just listed my property in Welland on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah, my first investment property that I ever bought.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you seeing better opportunities in Fort Erie now?
No, I think there's lots of opportunities in Welland. I just haven't seen anything come up in the last few months, and I've been aggressively looking. So,
okay. What is your typical, like, before the Airbnb thing, which I know is the newest endeavor, what is your typical approach to a BRRRR? Because I know you never really struck me as a guy that was renovating heavily. You weren't doing necessarily a duplex conversion. You may have.
No, I haven't done any duplex conversions.
Yeah. So whereas so many guys come on here, they've gone the whole shebang. They're spending over $100,000 to renovate a property, whereas you've been able to do it on the buy mostly. It's from the sounds of it. And what are you doing for renos on properties? I know this one you probably didn't even paint more than a couple of touch-ups.
No, there was it was the tenants pretty much moved in like within a couple of days of buying it, and that was
as
it.
is.
That was it as is. So I'll give you an example of one that I closed on September 12th. Right. So September 12th, like 13 days away. So this is another duplex. The upper unit is going to be a long-term tenant, 1 bedroom. Downstairs is going to be a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom Airbnb. It needed to be gutted. Like, we had to take everything out. So we have to take the kitchens out, bathrooms out, new flooring, new trim, paint. No electrical need to be done. Some plumbing needs to be done. And we had to get rid of a tenant too. So
I think you were posting on this. So for those who aren't following Shawn on Instagram, follow him because you were posting all the updates of actually, you had the police involved on that one. Did you not?
Our tenant got arrested.
Because of a temper tantrum that was thrown?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. We put the eviction notice on the door, and she got pretty upset. She might have been a little bit drunk. But yeah, she was pretty upset, and she was kicking doors and like knocking on windows and screaming. And somebody else called the police on her, and they ended up arresting her. They let her back in the house, and I spoke with her the next day when she was sober. She didn't remember that I was even there, so she was pretty inebriated. But again, just part of the journey, I guess. So this is some a good story to tell. But so we're still in the process of moving her. The downstairs is well on its way in renovation, so we've already gutted everything, done the full demo, dumpsters taken everything, and we've painted the whole entire lower level. We've bought the new kitchen cabinets are in. I have a flooring guy working there right now today.
So you've already re-drywalled. You said you gutted it. You've already put the drywall on.
We didn't take all the walls down. No. So
okay, so you just ripped out the existing kitchen, left bathroom, the walls as they are. Yeah. Electric stayed in.
Okay. We took out the tub. Took out vanity.
So it's not a clean slate basement rental where you just got concrete walls on all sides. Yeah. It was more of a clean it out and then let's refloor it, re-kitchen it.
Exactly.
Are you moving plumbing or you're leaving plumbing as is?
The only thing that we're going to be adding with plumbing is just a stackable washer and dryer in the bathroom because it was large enough to do that. So just a good use of space, I think.
So a little bit of broken concrete for that?
No.
Didn't even have to?
Don't even have to. No.
Yeah.
So all in, we're probably going to be looking at about 30,000 in renos for both upper and lower. And this property came on the market on MLS $160,000 because of just the state it was in, all the work that it needed. I put an offer on the first day for 185 and got it. I know there were multiple offers. I don't know what the other offers came in at, but we got it for 185. So the mortgage on that is 140,000. I got a purchase plus improvements on this one for 31,000. So I know that the 31,000 investment is gonna come back. Yeah. And then we're looking at an appraisal of probably around 300.
So you'll be in for around 200 and you'll get an appraisal at 3? Is that right?
Yeah. So I expect we'll probably make a $40,000 profit after getting our down payment and reno back.
So that's the truly perfect BRRRR where you can pull all your money out.
Yeah, we should be getting all the money out plus some profit as well.
Is that the one that's on the beach? That's one of the beach ones?
It's across the street from the beach. So it's you can just walk right down to the beach. It's a public beach. Yeah. So that's why I thought it was a great Airbnb.
Yeah, anything where you're close to the beach. I mean, the Niagara region, when I started in the mortgage business, it was, for a lot of people, it was like no go. Like private lenders wouldn't lend east of Hamilton. They're like, nope, not doing that. St. Catharines, sure, but anywhere else, no.
Yep.
Man, has it ever changed?
It has. It has.
Now it's like, and it's, these beach towns, they're the kind of last ones, right? They're the closest to Buffalo. They're the furthest from Toronto. It was just a matter of time before the ripples hit it. Yeah. And I say, drop the rock in the pond, the ripples spread, and that's where they're spreading. It's the next one. Really cool that you were able to find that way. Now, do you find there's a lot of competition down there on the market, or a lot of properties sitting? For
those kind of properties, there is a lot of competition. But again, I think it's just timing. You got to make sure that you're somebody asked, like I think it was yesterday, what's the best advice you can give a rookie investor? And my answer was 1, educate yourself, 2, take action, and 3, stay consistent. So it's about consistency. I'm looking every single day, and I'm making those connections so that when a good deal does come up, at least I'll be top of mind, and they'll say, maybe Shawn's going to be interested in this.
I like to ask this to anybody who's getting it done and getting it done effectively is, do you have a weekly structure or a daily structure of like a checklist, things that you do every day? And what are those things, and how do you keep yourself organized on a daily basis? Yeah,
time management is huge. I get that question a lot on how do you even manage to do all of this stuff? Because I'm still working my 9-to-5 job. I have a family. I have 2 kids, and I'm managing a portfolio of real estate on my own. It's all self-managed. So I don't have anything that's specifically structured. I do need to work on that. But I do find that I make a checklist, and it's almost like a mental checklist where I know that these are the things I need to do. And as those things come up to my mind, I don't ever procrastinate. I will do it on the spot. And so I just make sure that whenever something comes up, if it comes to my mind, I don't even put it to the side and say I'll do it later. I just do it at that exact moment.
So on any given day, I mean, of course, you've got family responsibilities when you wake up. Make sure the kids get off to school. Are they going to school yet?
Yeah, they're both in school now. Yeah.
Okay, so they grow up so fast.
They do.
So you've got to make sure the kids get off to school. Then you go to work.
Yeah.
And just presumably sometime at work, you're able to get on the MLS and check out some deals. I'm sure you're on a drip for the different areas you're interested in.
Yeah, I do get, before I was scouring MLS for every single deal, but now I'll get the email blast from, all Niagara region. I'll get Windsor market too. And
that's a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm looking. I like to just at least stay in the loop, right?
Know where stuff's at.
So I know where things are at. But I'll get all those, and those are probably the very first things that I look at in the morning is the real estate lists of all the properties that came on the market that day. So I'll go through them all, and if there's nothing interesting, I just hit delete. Sometimes I am getting text messages though from different real estate agents that I've connected with, asking me if I'm interested in specific ones.
Now, what I find with that, like I'm on one for Hamilton, and I have a great idea of the general, but every street sort of differs. And if you're north of King Street, south of Main, it might be confusing this in my head right now, but there's like a little pocket that's good. But if you're on the other side of the street, then it's not good.
They always used to say if you're north of the tracks.
North of the tracks,
sure. Then that's a bad area, but the demographics are changing.
It's just constantly changing, but I guess that where I was going with that is it can be quite difficult. So obviously this isn't something that happens overnight. Your ability to just by seeing it every day, you start to associate. Okay, I know that area. So you're doing that while you're at work. You have at least a break where you can. How much time are you spending on that to just look through the properties?
Actually, looking at real estate on a daily basis, I would say less than an hour.
Less than an hour. So you're going through all the drips. Are you crunching some numbers on a couple of them saying, well, based on that look, it probably cost me this to renovate that?
Yeah. If there's anything that actually would make sense, because the amount of duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, or even 6 units, anything like that is so minimal right now in the Niagara region that if anything does come up, I can usually do the numbers pretty quickly in my head. And if I can say in my head, I think this will make at least $500 cash flow, then I'll actually do an analysis, right? Or if I think even if it might break even, I'll do an analysis and I'll say, okay, if I change this, maybe their numbers are wrong, right?
are you looking for a certain percentage? Like, do you know, well, if that's a duplex, I should be able to get $2,400 gross rent.
Exactly.
And can I pick it up for 200?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that kind of what are you looking for 1% rule? Like you want to make sure your rents are 1% of your purchase price?
I was before, but I won't pass anymore on ones that are under it.
Yeah, like a 0.8% is okay.
I won't pass on it. No, I'll buy it still.
After I learned what the 1% rule was, because admittedly I never heard that until like 10 months ago. I look back at some of the ones I bought in BRRRR and I was around 0.65%.
Yeah.
And I was still making good cash flow.
Yeah.
So it's not that you can't.
It just depends how aggressive you want to be.
Yeah.
If you're patient and you don't mind waiting, then you can wait for those 1%. But how long will it take you to find that?
I think that like you've already obviously got that skill set with negotiation. If you were to take that into more off-market deals, I think that you wouldn't necessarily have to wait as long, but it's more of a process.
It is.
So for me, that's sort of like the next step is to really hone in on that off-market strategy.
Yeah.
And perfect my skills in it, because I've got a little bit of a soft spot for private sellers. You know, they give their sad story sometimes and you're like, well, want to help them out. And I actually feel bad to make an offer that would make sense for me. Like I feel like it's just going to insult them.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to do it. You know, I spent some time talking to a friend of mine that actually took one of my leads the last time I flyered, and he scored a deal.
Oh, wow.
Off of one of my leads.
Nice.
Scored a deal for like $70,000 under market value. He bought a semi-detached property in Hamilton for under $100,000.
What?
Yeah, that's what I said. Under 100. He got it for $95,000. He could have probably turned around and listed it for like 170 right off the bat.
That's ludicrous.
Yeah, it doesn't have a driveway, doesn't have a basement. So, I mean, two caveats. But under 100 grand, there's zero chance that's not worth. You can't find that. Like, you can't find anything for that price in Hamilton. So he stayed firm. He's like, you know what? This is the price I can do. And, you know, we started off on the phone with her, like, what do you think it's worth? She told him, like, right over the phone. He's like, ooh, that sounds high. Like, I'll be honest with you, it sounds high. He's like, I can still come take a look at it, but I think I'm going to be more down here. Like, you know, yeah. And she's like, okay, yeah, like, come take a look. He comes and looks. And he says, this is the number I could do. He comes back to her at 90. And she's like, well, she wanted like 170 at first. Then it was 135. Then it was 115. She's like, okay, well, I can come down to 115, but we need to close soon. He's like, hey, I appreciate that. You know, I'd love to help you out, but I told you, this is my number. This is what I can do. I'm going to send it to you, so you have the offer. He's like, even if you just throw it, you know, flush it down the toilet, at least I'll know I did my part and gave it to you. And then, so as he's about to do that, she calls him back and says, well, can you close it by the end of the month? Okay, they agreed on 95, $5,000 more, and
that's a good
got
story.
the deal done. And so he calls me back, says, "Oh, hey, I got that property done." I'm like, "What property?" He's like, "Oh, the one you gave me the lead on."
Nice, and that's a great buy. Like, yeah, you know, that's gonna make. Do you know what his plan is with it? Is he just gonna flip it?
Well, okay, so we were at a meetup the other day, and we were listening to a talk by Dylan Suter, if you know who that is. Yeah. He was on the podcast. So Dylan was doing a podcast and he was using an analogy saying McDonald's has a Big Mac and the Big Mac is the same no matter where you go. He's like, find your Big Mac, find the thing you do. And then Mike, after that talk, he's like, I'm going to sell that property. It's not my Big Mac.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So to him, like, that's not something he wants to hold as a rental, although he could be more than 1% rule on that, like cash flow like crazy. It just doesn't make sense for a guy like him. He wants to get, like, he just bought a 12plex. Like, you know, he's kind of into bigger stuff. That's just gravy. That's like a gravy deal. Like, you know, there's some cash that you weren't expecting.
Just some extra capital that you're going to get.
Yeah. So he'll be at the meetup tonight. You know, shout out to Mike, and anybody who wants to come out to the meetup, I can introduce you. He's inspiring anyways, to say the least. So great story, right? Like, that's the kind of story I love hearing. And it just makes me think, okay, well, I needed to be a little less, you know, concerned about the seller and just make the offer that made sense to me. And the other thing I heard somebody say, always be ready to make an offer the first time you see the property. Yep. Come in with an offer. And I wasn't doing that. I was waiting, going back, doing my evaluation. I should have been ready beforehand doing that. So
exactly, because you don't know if somebody will accept an offer, like any offer, right?
You don't want to waste your time, right? I mean, I spent all this time doing all this due diligence. I was like taking videos of the whole property, uploading it to YouTube, making my notes on it. And I was like analysis paralysis, not getting to the point of making an offer. What I should have been spending all that time doing is, working with a realtor that would kind of give me all the info, and I could just back end that realtor if it didn't work out, right? Try my pitch. Hey, by the way, I've got a realtor says he'd list your property right now for this price, since it's not working out. So there's a way to do that as a win-win. I don't know why I'm spilling all the beans on this podcast, but anyways, I think there's a way to do that as a win-win, and I'm going to come back around on it. I'm going to be doing another round of flyering, and that's a skill to me. It's a life skill. Finding deals way under market is a life skill.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. An investor's number one tool as a real estate investor, I think.
Exactly.
Anyways, enough of my rant. Tell me about more about the Airbnb, because that's the next big thing for you. I know you've kind of walked me through what you're doing for renos. Actually, before you do that, who's doing your renos? Do you got a good contractor?
Oh, so I got a story for that. So I had a contract. I had a contractor that was doing pretty much all of my work for all the properties. I could call him any time of day or night. He would show up, and really I could have him like emergency calls, anything, he would show up. I trusted him enough that I never asked him how much he charges. He would just invoice me, and it was always fair.
Yeah.
And so he was doing all the work on this one that I was just telling you about. And he has some health issues that I was aware of. And I think the job just kind of is a little bit too much, stressed him out. So I got a text message yesterday saying that he's not going to be able to complete the job. Super apologetic. He said he's not going to charge me for labor for the last 2 days that he was working on the job. But yeah, I need to find a new contractor. So the flooring that I have the guy doing today is subcontracted. Another contact that I had, but it wasn't in the plan for him to do the work. So I've subcontracted that out, and I'm going to have to subcontract the rest of the work out.
This is where, as an investor, like, we can get kind of lazy because we've got the guy that just keeps going. It just keeps working. But then that one time happens, or something comes up in their lives, or heaven forbid they get injured or have a health problem.
Yeah.
And then you're left holding the bag. I've got one guy that does a ton for me, similar relationship. I don't think he's got any health problems. He'll be there tonight too. I keep saying tonight. When this airs, there will not probably be a meetup tonight, but there will be more meetups. So make sure you hit me up, and I'll get you the link. I'll also make sure it's in this podcast, the show notes. But yeah, so he gets busy like anyone else, and everybody's always taking on so many jobs, right? Like, your contractor says, well, Shawn may be able to give me 30% of the work I need to keep busy, so I'm going to go find the other 60 or 70%.
Exactly.
And then they realize that the 30% you gave them was actually like 60%. And then the other 70% they think they found was actually 100%. So now they're like overstretched really by thin. 60%.
Exactly.
And it never seems to work well when people are jumping back and forth between projects. Like, they kind of just need to stay. My process worked best where I had a full-time employee that was a competent framer. He could basically frame, project manage, do flooring, trim and door, all the basics. So I'd still sub drywall and the kitchens and stuff, but all the odds and ends worked. So I was actually able to do new construction build, additions, and have it closed in 3 months, 3.5 months,
fairly quickly.
Yeah, like really quickly. Whereas those things could stretch on 5 months now if I'm subbing everything to different people.
Yes, I do see that with some of the people that are doing the duplex conversions, and
it can take a lot
longer.
They're
taking way longer than expected.
Here's the way it works, because I'm sure for people who haven't been there, it actually is new. My experience of how it works, having had guys that worked for me and did everything, is the quality is not quite as good. Like, it's passable, but it's never going to be quite as good. If you got a guy that doesn't do trim and door every day, like, his joints are going to be a little less solid. There's going to be a little bit more caulking needed, but you're going to get stuff done fast. And if you're doing stuff that doesn't need to be super high end, then that's probably okay. Or you go with subs, and then you get a specialized trade for each thing. And that's what they do all day long. Your drywall guy only does drywall. Your trim guy only does trim. But then you wait for their schedule. They're finishing up a job. Your job's supposed to start on Tuesday, but the last guy before was late 3 days. So now they're pushed back. So now your other contractor takes on a different job in between.
Exactly.
And things just go on and on and on. And I actually do prefer to have my own internal employee, as long as I've got enough workflow to keep them busy.
Yes.
So as I scale back up, that's something I'm going to be looking to do again. That's just, to me, the best way to scale and grow.
Absolutely.
To have somebody that's not going to leave your site, and go somewhere else. Sure, everyone starts somewhere. You're not going to hire an employee off of day one, but down the road, I think that's a great way to go.
I was just talking to a friend of mine. We had this exact conversation. Because he's scaled his portfolio into larger units as well, like 11 units and I think a 24 unit now. And you have to have that property management in place, and then you have to have somebody you have to have everything systematized for you to be able to scale and grow. So if you want to go from buying 2 units, 3 units, 4 units and start buying apartment buildings, you need to really, or if you're just doing new builds, right? You need to have that one guy that's dedicated, that's going to basically manage everything. Otherwise, you're the one who's going to be doing everything all the time. I ran into this on the weekend. This exact same job where this contractor had left, he has now left. And it wasn't his fault, but we went to Home Depot, rented out an air sprayer for paint, and had it dropped off, ready to go. He tried using it in the morning. They hadn't cleaned it properly at Home Depot. Yeah. And he spent a couple hours trying to fix it. And then he brought it back to Home Depot, and then they cleaned it, and then he brought it back. So he lost half the day, and he wasn't able to come back the next day. So our plan was to finish everything in that one day. And I ended up actually finishing the job myself because I knew I had to get that done so that we can continue with the process. So
I've been there.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a BRRRR. I ended up selling it, but I actually I sprayed the whole house in one night. Again, not the best strategy, but it was passable. And I sprayed the whole house, and I finished at like 5:30 a.m. Went to 7-Eleven, got like a cookie for breakfast, slept in my car for an hour, and then the workers showed up, and I literally opened the door as my worker shows up. I'm like, "Oh, hey, Bill, how you doing?" After an hour of sleep in my car. Yeah. Sometimes you got to do that crunch time, and that's where, I mean, to me, that seems like such a foreign concept now. Like going back to the way I used to do things. I guess I'm a little spoiled that I don't have to do that, but that's where I rely so much on the good trades.
Exactly.
Like my painter, that guy like bends over backwards for me. Good guy. Like he credits me with helping him start his business because he had a partner, and I guess between talking to me and one other guy, we gave him enough business. I gave him enough business that he could leave his partner and just go out on his own, started his company, and he's been growing and flourishing ever since. So he always says, he's like, "Andrew, for you." And I try not to take advantage. He's like, "Oh, whatever you want to pay." I'm like, "No, please don't do that. No, tell me what's fair to you." Yep. Like that's the conversation. He's like, "Andrew, you just pay me whatever you think is fair." And I'm like, "No, we're not doing that." Like,
that's a great relationship to have.
Yeah. We're going to do whatever we both think is fair.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
exactly.
You want people like that. Treat them well and bend over backwards for them.
And they'll treat you just as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that kind of relationship, I try and find more of them as I can.
Yep.
I find the meetups good for that. We're going to go to the meetup after this because there are a few contractors that come and they've done work for people that are in the room. I love that. You can actually get firsthand referrals of people who've used them.
Exactly. So. That's great. I've had some people reaching out to me recently that are investing in the Niagara region. They're asking me for tradespeople, and they're from GTA, right? So they don't have those connections. It's so important to get those connections.
Yes, those connections are everything. Yeah, they say network is your net worth, and I believe that more and more as time passes. I'm actually really loving the idea of general contractors. I've never used a general contractor ever. I've been the general contractor. One thing I sort of regret on this conversation is not having every system and procedure written out. I had everything in my head. I've had everything in my head all along, and I had good employees that knew what was in my head and they knew what to do. But, one of those employees I had ended up having some personal problems, could no longer work for me. And I was like a month from students moving in, and I was not anywhere near ready for the students to move in. And it was like incredibly stressful. Like, I think what's important is establishing what's your expectation for trim and door, what's your expectation for flooring and walls, and framing. Like, even if you're not an expert in these things, if you know that your tile guy complains because the wall isn't framed perfectly, then in your expectations for framing around, the bathtub, you literally can make a Word document with pictures and show a level against it. Really depends on how deep you want to go, but I think it's worth investing in a good manual for what you expect. Sure, you can have a good general contractor, but what happens if that general contractor gets too busy and says, "I can't help you anymore"? Then what do you do when the next one doesn't have the same level of quality expectation that the first one did, or the standard? There's a good book, The E-Myth Revisited, I think it was Michael E. Gerber, and it's all about creating systems in your business.
I got to read that.
And yeah, I got to go back and read it. It basically explains why do most businesses fail? Because people don't have systems. And so right now, like I'm doing it with the podcast. Like I've got a new person that's helping me with editing the podcast. And I'm saying like one of the first things we're doing is we're systematizing everything. Yeah. Like I'm showing you, but we're recording a manual for how to do this. Because eventually I'll want him doing other things. And then we're going to give somebody else the manual and say, now you're doing the podcast.
Exactly.
And I think changes will be less daunting with systems.
Yes.
And generally speaking, like changes of people, personnel. If you've got everything so dummy proof that even somebody who's not in that specific trade knows what you want. Yeah, granted, they're not going to be as fast at it, but they know what you want and they can make sure it happens. Then, you know, that's a win. You might need to hire expert help to help you build the procedures. Mm-hmm. But, you know, say that costs you a couple $1,000s to have like, you know, have your framer write the framing part and your trim guy write the trim part. I think at the end of the day, that's worth it. That's something I'm mulling over. I know I'm rambling here, but I think that could actually be really, really valuable in this business.
It absolutely would be. One of the things that this is more of a personal strategy, and maybe it's a tip for newer investors, is when I started buying and doing the renovations, I was hands-on with a lot of the stuff. So I wasn't just hiring the contractors and then just letting them have at it and do whatever they want to do. I would go onto the site and make sure that I was there, and almost like, I don't want to use the word micromanaging, but it was more like me just being there, being on the spot, asking lots of questions, asking them if they think that this is the right thing to do or this is the right thing to do, getting their suggestions, and then using all of that feedback to now have a better understanding of what's the right way to be doing the tiling. What's the right way to put this kitchen in? How should this plumbing be done? How should the electrical be done, right? And with all of that, I think that I now have a much, much stronger, better understanding of how to go in and do the renovation. So even though I'm spending a lot less time than I was before with the renovations, but now I can go in and I can tell the contractor, I need you to do this and I need you to do it this way. And that makes everything so much more streamlined.
Yes, I do think that's important. For me, it was baptism by fire because my first one, I general contracted myself and it was pretty significant. And the only other experience I'd had in construction or renovations was when I was 9 and my parents built a house. And I laid some shingles. Call that irresponsible on my parents' mom if you're listening. Maybe you shouldn't have done that. No, I'm just kidding. It was fun. Anyway, so I didn't have a lot of experience. Learned baptism by fire. People will help, though. It's like anything. Like if you find a couple of good people who understand where you're coming from, say, hey, look, I am new at this, but I'm looking to grow. I'm an investor first and foremost, but I need to be responsible, grow responsibly. So I'm going to general contract my own project to learn. I actually don't even recommend this, but I also don't recommend using a GC unless you know beyond a shadow of a doubt, like it's a good relationship to have. So maybe start small, do a couple of small renovations with your own people, find your own trades, and then grow. That would probably be the easiest way.
Yes.
I grew way too fast, but if you do that, like you said, you just learn everything. You learn the lingo. You learn how they speak.
Exactly.
You know, is that column plumb or level? No, the column is plumb and the, you know, table is level. You know, just things like that. I actually had one of the trades correct me. He's like, first off, the wall is plumb, not level. I'm like, okay, good to know.
It also, I think, prevents you from getting taken advantage of by anybody.
Yes. Yeah, once you can show them that you know what goes into it, I think the most critical single piece of information you want to get out of it is how many hours does it take to do that job? Because if you understand how many hours it takes to do the job and do it right, then you can start to quantify what it should cost.
Yep.
Because every person, whether they want to admit it or not, is kind of factoring in a payment for their time.
Yes.
So they'll say I price by the job, but they're ultimately figuring, well, I want to make at least $50 or $80 an hour, but I can't tell him that, so I'm just going to give him a job price or whatever.
Exactly.
You know, he wants certainty, so I'll give him a job price.
Exactly.
So if you work backwards and you say, well, a good skilled person in this field is probably going to want to make this, then when you get a quote for $10,000 and you were expecting $5,000, you just don't even bother with that guy and you keep looking to the next one. So it helps so much when you talk to them, they get it. They'll respect you as a professional. And I think that you want to grow in this business. That's just part of the process.
Exactly.
Start small, right? The first couple properties, you're using a home inspector, you know, if just a minor lipstick type renovation, a little paint, maybe some cabinets, and then you can grow, right? Like Shawn, you didn't start off big on your first one, right?
No, I was house hacking and doing little tiny renovations over, you know, a year. Yeah. Basically a year, 2 years, 3 years. On that property in Welland that I was telling you about. That's the one that I listed this week, actually.
Yeah. Did it still turn out well, or do you look back at it and you're like, well, it would be a lot better if I did it again now?
That property was the worst investment property I've ever bought.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, no, it was. It is, because when I did an audit or an analysis of all the properties that I have, and that one is the only property that I own that breaks even.
Oh, so you're
cash
saying
flow wise,
it's not making cash; it's only breaking even.
It's breaking even, yeah. Mm-hmm. And I mean, on the equity side, it's appreciated by double, so that's a good thing. But with the LTB laws, you have to keep your tenants, and you can only raise by the standard guidelines. My tenants have been there for quite a while, and it made more sense to sell it.
Yeah. Did you ask them if they would leave?
No, I didn't ask them if they leave. If they would leave. I was very upfront with them. I gave them the option to do rent to own initially, because I thought, you know, if they want to buy it and we can make a deal, then I won't list it. I'm selling it privately. I'll still get the pay down over the next 3 years. Maybe it'll appreciate in 3 years, and then I can help somebody out too at the same time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, with their finances and everything at the purchase price that I was asking, they weren't able to do it. So then the second option that I gave them was that I was upfront and said that I'm going to be selling the property just because it's not performing well, and it is an investment for me. So I gave them the option that if they wanted to, we could increase their rent, and I wouldn't sell it. Totally optional, no obligation, right? One of the tenants did actually say that they'd be willing to pay $300 more a month than what they were already paying. Yeah, which was great. The other one was non-negotiable. They didn't want to raise it, and it just wasn't enough cash flow for me. So that's why I ended up making that decision.
Sure does make it seem like a great option here in Ontario to buy something new construction, or if you build a new construction unit. I actually found out this gold nugget. Now, don't quote me on this, but basically, if it's new, I think it was after November 2018, it's not rent controlled.
That is absolutely correct. Yeah. Yes.
So here's the one I've got to get clarification on this, and I'm not sure who to ask. The one property I pulled the permit in September, didn't finish it until April, or no, finished. I think it closed the permit in February. So which side of that deadline do I fall on? Because November fell after I took out the permit, but then I didn't finish the unit until after that the rule came into place. In
2019?
Yeah, I closed the permit in 2019, so the unit was finished.
That's a good question.
See, it's sticky. No, you got a fair.
Yeah, but they may say that because it wasn't finished.
It definitely was not livable before the rule was passed.
Yeah, so they might say that those guidelines don't apply to that one.
So I probably have to call LTB, the landlord tenant board, to ask them that question. Now they heavily favor tenants, so I feel like they'll just say it's in favor of the tenant if it's in question. But hey, it doesn't hurt to ask. I won't give them any specifics. I won't give them the address. And
you probably started off at market rents anyway, since it is a new.
Yeah. And the girl in there, honestly, I walked in there, she keeps it like a model unit. Perfect. Like if I was a leasing agent showing a model unit, this is how I would keep the unit. I walked in there to change the furnace filter. I was blown away.
That's great.
I'm like, oh my God. It was
amazing. Have to love it when you have tenants that are like that really treat it like their home. Yep. They don't treat it like they're just, boarding there for a year and then gonna go somewhere else. So
that's the whole strategy with Do It Nice, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and not everybody agrees, and there are pros and cons to it, but I mean that's the one with the vaulted ceilings and the quartz counters and stainless steel. It's just a single girl by herself, started a new career. She wanted a second bedroom so people could come visit her. She got the 2-bed, 2-bath. So it's everything she wanted, worked out just right. like nicer product attracts nicer tenant,
It's
right?
very true. I had a discussion today about whether I should be buying the laminate countertop or the quartz or granite for the kitchen, and we're gonna get the granite. But maybe if you asked me before, I might have said the laminate to save the cost. But I think with the strategy that we're trying to do, especially with Airbnb, we want it to be a little bit nicer. So spend the extra money.
I actually just did my first laminate countertop in like 4 years
on
my property that it already had laminate in it, and I was just doing like a little gussy up. At the time, I just didn't think it was necessary to get the rents. Like I didn't think it was going to make any difference. And, but you know what? I went against my own advice. I usually always do it. It was a totally unexpected renovation. It was like a $25,000 cash call that I was not expecting whatsoever. So I just said, you know what? I'll replace like with like, and down the road, if I want to go a little more extreme, I will, but
it has to make sense.
Yeah.
So in this scenario, we know that we're going to get an appraisal done on the house right when we finish.
Yep.
So I think we'll get it back on the appraisal anyways.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in certain neighborhoods, it really doesn't make sense to do it. Yeah. But I think where I invest, generally speaking, it does.
Yeah.
And any sort of family rental I would ever do as like a new renovated product, like a fully planned renovation, I would always be doing it because I'd rather just the tenant profile I want is the professional, hopefully in transition. I actually heard Sarah Larby talk about this. I haven't published the podcast yet, but I also heard her talk about it on her podcast. Is she does not like it when people come in and say they're looking for their forever home. She does not want that. She wants people who are coming in saying that they're moving to the area, they'd like to try out the neighborhood. Or they're not sure if they'll be staying in town. They're on a work contract for 2 years or a work contract for 1 year. Some form of transition, right? Because then they'll leave.
I can understand that.
Then you can increase rent. You don't want forever home.
Exactly.
I mean, and this was kind of like, at first I heard that and I'm like, that is brilliant. Like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah. And my perspective probably, if you asked me a couple of years ago, would have been different. I would have said, I want somebody to come in that's never going to leave. Yeah. But with experience comes that knowledge that you don't want to get stuck with the same people living there forever. You do want to have that turnover. You maybe want to renovate it, make it look a little bit nicer, increase the rents as the time goes by as well.
Banks look at your income, and if you have a low rent, it could hurt you on everything you try and do. So it's not just that it underperforms, it hurts you from doing other things too.
Exactly.
So it's worth it to give your tenant a bonus, to give them first month free to get the higher rent number on the lease so that you can show the bank the higher rent number. Even if you give them first month free, that's fine. I mean, that's totally kosher as far as the bank's concerned. There's nothing illegal about that. Give them an incentive to come in and charge them a higher rent. And
especially if you want to grow, because the banks will limit you, if you're not showing that income.
And I think it's our market too, right? For somebody who's in a market that's not experiencing the growth that we have, maybe they do just want the tenant that will stay forever. But in our high growth market, it's kind of become a detriment. Okay, so what haven't we covered yet today? I wanted to get the full update from you. So the Airbnb strategy is the next big thing that's occupying your mind. What caused you to decide that?
So I've met a couple people that are doing Airbnbs in that area. I actually didn't know anything about Airbnb other than that I've actually used it myself during traveling. And I didn't know what the markets were like in Niagara Region. I didn't realize that people are willing to pay $200 a night to stay in Crystal Beach or Niagara Falls or even Fort Erie. So that was kind of a shock to me. And then when I looked at the numbers of some people that I've met that actually do operate Airbnbs there, I was kind of blown away. And I said, okay, that same type of unit, I'd be able to rent out for, let's say, $1,200 a month. So if I was getting like $14,000 a year, that would equate to less than what they're making just in the summer. So if I was renting out long term, they're making like anywhere between $16,000 and $24,000
in the summer
4 months
on a unit.
On that same unit,
single unit. Okay.
And if it gets rented outside of those 4 months, that's even more profit. So from a profitability standpoint, it makes sense, and I was able to hedge that risk by getting the ones that have another unit upstairs that pay for the cost of the property.
Yeah, and you know what? That's also probably a pretty good thing from an HST standpoint, so that the asset's never looked at as being a commercial asset, because you still have 50% of it being used for normal residential.
I haven't thought about that, but yes.
That's the technical speak. Our American friends don't need to worry about that. I'm sure you have your own worries, but that's one of our Ontario challenges. I agree with you that it seems very lucrative. The challenge I have is the market validation, which I've also been having some conversations, and this is something I will be diving into probably in the next 6 to 12 months, taking on some Airbnbs, because I do think the cash flow is going to warrant it. Mm-hmm. I kind of like the idea of doing it in more of a place like Hamilton or Toronto, like where it's more of a year-round occupancy, whereas a beach town is going to be very, very focused on summer.
Yes, exactly.
And so I guess the true litmus test will be, how do you do over the winter?
Yes, yeah.
I have a feeling even people that were thinking about staying in Fort Erie, I don't know, how far are you? Like 20 minutes?
From where?
From Fort Erie?
No, like where I am, or where the Airbnbs are? Oh, Crystal Beach. That's about 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
10 minutes.
Or if they go to the other beach place?
That's in Fort Erie.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you're only 10 minutes. So people who were just planning on coming to Fort Erie, or maybe they were doing something in the area in the winter, I feel like you'll get some. Yeah,
because it's bordering Buffalo, New York.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that a lot of the people that are booking are US.
So there's Americans would be like, well, I wouldn't mind seeing
crossing
Canada.
over into Canada.
We'll just pop over there, and then we'll head on up.
Yeah, and with the dollar, it's a lot cheaper though. So if you're charging $200 a night, it's only $140 for them.
That's actually super interesting. I would love to see some of these numbers as you get going. So you'll have to shoot me an email and kind of let me know how it's going. I think that there's, like, no matter what market anyone's in, like, you kind of got to do some validation. Did you have a specific validation other than your friends showing you some numbers, or that was enough? You saw, hey, similar area, similar units, I can't go wrong. Yeah.
So I think it was, it's kind of overall a few different things. One being that I'm able to do the BRRRR strategy and execute it on the property. So I know that I'm going to be able to get most of my money back, and it can potentially cash flow thousands of dollars a month with Airbnb. If it doesn't, and worst case scenario, it's horrible, nobody wants to rent on Airbnb, I know that I can still rent it long term to a regular tenant on a long term strategy, and maybe still cash flow $500 to $800 a month on it. So it's still a win-win either way.
Perfect example of multiple strategies, right? Multiple exits. One, call it an exit. It's not really an exit, but refi an Airbnb, refi and rent to regular tenants. In your case, you don't even need to refi. It's making the money that you needed to make.
Yep.
And then, of course, down the road, you can go back and refi that and pull a bunch of money out.
Hopefully.
So yeah, it'll hopefully be good for you. Now, kind of a different question here, but what's changed in your life personally since the last time you were on, or business-wise? I know you're focusing on Airbnb, but do you feel like there's been a major shift for you?
I wouldn't say major, but it definitely, it's this journey that I feel that I'm going on that is just progressing into something that I wasn't planning. So I think on the last episode, we talked about kind of my path to getting into real estate, and then how I got started and how I grew over a year and a half. And now I'm seeing that, with the cash flow coming in from the properties, obviously, like it does change your life, because you don't stress as much about like having a job and having that money coming in. And so in that sense, it does give you more of freedom, right? It gives you more freedom, maybe a little bit more financial independence. And I think that this journey that I'm going along now, I just want to continue growing, but I've had a lot of people reaching out to me, and I want to just add value to other people's lives by maybe like teaching them, just showing them, giving them my hand and saying, here, that like you can do exactly what I'm doing if you just follow these steps. Because we talked about this last time too. There's a recipe to be able to do this successfully. And why not just help these people that are trying to get into real estate, that are trying to change their lives, they're trying to create financial freedom for themselves and their family. And so I think I'm trying to kind of change my path into not just focusing on myself and and my investing, but also helping other people too.
That's awesome. And I love that about our community of investors is it seems like everyone's so willing to help.
Yes. Yep.
It's a good thing. I know so many industries, people aren't like that. For some reason, this one, people are. They want to, some of it's bragging. People are like, you know what I'm doing? Hey, those are great moments to tune in.
Yeah.
When people tell you a success story.
Yeah.
But, what you're talking about, I think it is fantastic. I think that there's sort of a process that needs to be followed. Like no one can just hear it from you if they don't implement, right? If they're not looking at properties every day like you've been doing to know that's a good deal, that's not a good deal, or that property stands out as being under value. Because I've seen houses on that street all year long and that one's the lowest one I've ever seen.
Exactly.
So then you start to know, you see patterns, and the only way you're going to get that is if you're constantly looking.
Exactly. It all comes through experience and, surrounding yourself with the same people that are doing the same things.
Yeah. So it's a combination, if I had to summarize it, and I wonder if you agree. So I would say podcasts, books, like there's a certain amount of that. You should have it every day happening.
Yes.
Real estate books and podcasts, and then meetups. I would say try and get to like 4 a month if you can. Everyone's got like a different schedule, and then find people who are willing to mentor and either work for them for free or pay them to be your coach. Or if they're willing enough and you can get enough of what you need, just gently ask questions until you get enough answers. And I was fortunate enough, like I had somebody do that for me, never charged me. Yep. He actually acted as my realtor, but he was an investor too. So he taught me and sold me properties.
That's perfect scenario.
And so he was an investor and he would take the best properties and give me the second best properties. That's okay.
That's okay.
I still made money. Like I said, you can't get your ego into it. But man, did I ever learn. And those are life skills.
Yeah.
And then, I ended up doing stuff he hadn't done and I ended up teaching him back.
Yeah.
And, it goes around, comes around. So
exactly.
It worked out really well.
And I find that I just want to share, like you almost just want to share your experiences and say like, this, if you have this scenario, like you can do this, and you give your different experiences. And sometimes it's almost like eye opening for people and they have this aha moment where they're like, I never thought of that. And it changes their whole journey, their whole path that they were going on.
Well, it's nice to help people, right?
Yeah.
Like obviously everyone wants to. I want to help as many people as I can. Like I think that's why the big part of doing the podcast, sometimes it's hard to get in person with people, but that's what the meetups are for. And it's all part of the process. And, I certainly am glad to be able to be in this little community. So Shawn, why don't you remind people where they can reach you if they want to follow your journey and, maybe get in touch with you?
So I'm super active on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, just Shawn Rea. I have a website, reaig.com, and I think ShawnRea.com as well. So you can reach me on there. And if you send me a DM or message me with any questions, I will make sure that I do respond and answer back.
Awesome. Well, that's one heck of an offer, right? And I offer the same. I will respond back to everyone. So anyways, Shawn, really appreciate it. I know this was a little bit of a trip for you, but I'm sure the listeners and viewers will certainly be glad that you made the trip. Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here and I'm looking forward to the meetup tonight. All right. Okay. So Shawn, we'll see you at the meetup and then on the next update. All right. Thanks, Andrew. Talk soon. Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to today's episode. Just a quick reminder to please rate and review this podcast if you have not already done so. If you're watching on YouTube, please take a moment and click that subscribe button, give it a like, leave me a comment. It just helps more people to find the podcast, helps it grow.